The most beautiful checkmate ever played. Can you find it? White to move and checkmate. Just pause the video and try to do it yourself before I reveal this beautiful checkmate. What's up, chess player, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. And today we are trying to solve this absolutely incredible checkmate, one of the greatest in the entire chess history. Rasalima in 1944 played here as white. And first of all, just look at this king on f3. Like, what on earth is it doing on s3? It's such a wild position. But anyway, white is about to give a checkmate. How is it possible? It seems like there are so many defenders in front of it. But how do you understand whether you are ready for the checkmating attack or not? You calculate the number of attacking material and the number of defending pieces. In this case, we have for black these two defensive pieces. Like, nobody else potentially cannot help the defense, only if those pieces somehow disappear. And how many attacking pieces do we have? Well, we have this rook, we have this rook, we have this knight, and this queen also potentially joining the attack once this rook is away. So we have 4 in total. That would be 2 more than our opponent has defensive pieces. If we have at least 2 more attacking pieces, then we are allowed to go wild, to sacrifice, to attack, because we have the potential. Of course, it's still no guarantee that it's gonna succeed, but it's a good positional foundation that, well, something might be there. And then we start to calculate. Of course, we always start with the most active opportunities, which are checks, captures, and threats. If you're gonna miss a very good opportunity in your game, 99% of the situations, it's going to be either a check or a capture or a threat. That is why I ask you to always focus on it first. It doesn't mean that you must make the check once you see it, like in this position, for example, the move knight to f6. Yes, it's a check, potentially maybe interesting because, well, first of all, it's a royal fork, and then if black takes it, then the g file is opened, seems to be interesting. But it doesn't mean you should immediately do it. No, never make a move unless you have thought about what your opponent can do. This is like the golden principle. This one alone would help you improve at chess so much. If you never forget that you don't play in chess alone, you always have your opponent to face. So let's calculate. Let's start with checks here. Knight to f6 and knight to g5 and rook to g7 are only 3 checks we have at our disposal. Let's start with rook takes g7 because that's at the same time a capture, so we basically must start with it. Rook takes, well then bishop takes seems to be the most appropriate move. You always start with the move that seems to be the most reasonable for your opponent, not with the one you like the most. Bishop to g7, why it's better than other moves? Well, because it's a move forward, it's bringing a new piece into the defense, which is better than playing knight takes g7 back and, well, making a passive. So bishop takes g7. Now do we have any follow-up? And once again, we start with checks, captures, and threats. So many people forget about it. They are like starting with the check on first move, but then the second move, they are just starting to choose their moves in a completely chaotic manner. No, that's not the way. On every move, by the way, both for your opponent and yourself, you must start in this specific order. So rook takes, bishop takes. Do we have any checks? Well, we only have knight f6 and knight g5. In both cases, our knight is going to be taken. Knight f6, bishop takes, knight g5, pawn takes. There are no checks left. We have sacrificed a bunch of pieces, but it didn't help us at all. So we make the conclusion that rook g7 is not good enough. Now, the second move is knight f6, I have mentioned before. Pawn has to take, otherwise we just win on the spot. Do we have any follow-up? Once again, rook g7 is the only check, doesn't help, bishop takes. Captures, well, we can take this pawn back on f6, but it doesn't really help. We still don't have any threats at all, and now our opponent can play queen to d5, check, and start creating difficulties for us. Knight to g5 is another check, but takes. This time we do have a check, rook h1, but then the king just hides there on g8. Once again, it doesn't seem like we have a reasonable option to follow. So that doesn't work. Let's come to the second part of our system, which is captures. Well, we have already mentioned rook takes g7, didn't work. Do we have another capture? We have rook takes f5. That seems to be interesting, because first, remember what I have told you about the number of attacking material and defensive material? Well, the knight is one of the 2 pieces that is defending the black's position. If we remove that, it's much simpler for us to continue the attack. And also remember what I have told you about this queen. If this rook somehow goes somewhere, then the queen is opened up and a very aggressive and active piece. We can use it to our advantage. So that would mean that we would have 3 attacking pieces against just 1. That gives us a lot of good chances. But that doesn't mean that our variation will automatically work. So we have to calculate what our opponent can do. Well, if he doesn't take back, then we are just winning the knight for free. That can never be bad, and we still continue our attack. So, of course, we must always start with taking back, unless he has also some checks. But the only checks are here, knight x e5 and knight x d4. In both cases, we just take these knights, and that's not dangerous for us. So rook takes f5, pawn takes f5. How do we go on? Well, once again, checks. Knight f6, knight g5, rook g7, and in this case, we also have got an additional check which we didn't have before. Namely, this queen is now open. It could go all the way to h6, sacrifice itself to give a check. Now, as stupid as it might sound, we have to be open-minded and really think about it, because every blunder seemingly might turn out to be a very, very good move, and unless we are open-minded, we will never notice it and we'll always miss it. Rook takes f5, pawn takes. Let's start with this queen takes h6, because all of the other moves we have already checked before. It didn't work for us in that variation. It might change, of course, but let's start with a new opportunity. Rook takes f5, pawn takes, queen takes h6. Now, our opponent has 2 options, pawn takes and king takes. 2 active options. Of course, he can go back, but that is not that dangerous for us. If we are moving forward and our opponent goes back, that is always a better thing for us. But let's say we consider that as well. King to g8, we just have knight f6, another check, which is in the same situation checkmate, because this pawn is pinned. So the king has absolutely no squares to go. That is checkmate in 1. So our opponent absolutely must take the pawn. If he takes with the pawn, then we have once again this check, knight f6, king goes to h8, and rook to g8. That would be a checkmate, just straightforward, check, check, check. But to do that, we have to calculate. We need to see what our opponent can do, what the options we have afterwards, and so on. So that feels to be very promising, but it's not that simple. So let me walk you through this variation and show you why it's tougher than you might think. So rook takes f5. Like I mentioned, black really has to take. Otherwise, first of all, it doesn't stop the queen takes h6 idea. We just are going to have another knight in another piece in the attack, this rook on f5. So he has to take. Then we play queen takes h6. Beautiful queen sacrifice. Now, king to g8, as mentioned, just knight f6, checkmate. Pawn takes, as mentioned, knight to f6, king to h8, and rook to g8. Absolutely no defense. So the only move for black is king takes, but here is where it becomes interesting, because how do we continue? Like, we have only this knight, this bishop, and this rook left, and, well, the king is still not checkmated, so we have to be active. One really good thing to remember: when you sacrifice that much of material, you absolutely must to be as active as possible and basically just giving checks, because otherwise your opponent is going to be able to stabilize, and then you're gone. This is why this position is even more impressive than you might think about it, because first, of course, white gives a check. Like, we have to attack this king, otherwise we don't have any chances at all. But what do we do after black makes the only move, king to g6? It's so amazing here. It seems like the best thing we do have is just this perpetual check with rook g1 and rook h1, but we don't win in this case. This video is brought to you by Chestnut. Chestnut is making amazing chessboards that allow you to play online from a real 3D board. They have high quality chessboards, nice looking chess pieces, so that you can enjoy and having fun playing it. Chestnut boards also have so many training functions that I absolutely love to use to my training, and it helps me to improve my chess every day. This is, for example, Chestnut Evo. I love to use it for my trainings, but they have so much to offer you depending on your preferences and your budget. And the best part is you can just use the promo code Journey to Grandmaster or click the link in the description to get a big discount on all of the Chestnut products. How on earth do we win? This knight cannot help us at all because it stands diagonally one square away from the king, so we don't have any ways to give a check with the knight. Remember, we also have this bishop, this little guy seemingly doing absolutely nothing and not able to help us in the attack. Well, now the time has come for this bishop to become a star. But to do that, this king stands on the way. Like, it's literally not allowing us to deliver a check with the bishop. Bishop h5 would be a very promising check. So what do? What white played in this position? King to f4, this quiet move with the king after sacrificing your rook and your queen. This is so crazy. This is exactly what I have told you. Like, when you sacrifice a great number of material like that, you must give checks. But here is the opposite of that. That makes it such a beautiful checkmate, because king goes forward, a bunch of pieces are there, and white doesn't care, just going forward with the king. And there are no checks. Notice, black has absolutely zero checks, and they also have no defense against the checkmate. So if you just take this knight, you're one move away from just winning the game completely. Just play queen f5 check, and game is over. Like, black has 27 extra pieces, absolutely zero chances for white. But this one tempo is crucial. Chess is a tragedy of one tempo. White plays here bishop to h5 check. The king has to go to h file, and doesn't matter where you go. In any case, there is bishop takes f7. That is a check from the rook. The king has no squares to escape. Yes, he can block the check with the queen, but we take it, and that's a checkmate here. So black cannot take this knight on e4. It leads to checkmate immediately. But black has so many pieces on the board. Maybe you can do something about it. Maybe you can use it to defend. Well, the best try is queen to e6. Because in this case, if we just played the same thing with bishop h5, king goes to h7, and we play bishop takes f7, well, black can play queen to h6 check, and we don't have anything. Like, we can play knight g5 still, but still king to h8, and then we have to take this guy, and then our knight is hanging. We have to take this guy, and then we lose the game. If we don't give a check, okay, that's better version. We have here, yeah, still the knight is hanging. So we lose. In any case, black has an extra piece. So bishop h5 is not winning here, but then we don't have any more checks. Rook g1, as mentioned, wouldn't really help. In this case, the king will even escape here all the way to g8, so it's not an option at all. So what do we do here to win as white? You're not gonna believe this move. Another quiet move. Second in a row. Win a queen down, a whole queen down without any compensation whatsoever. White plays here rook to h8. Can you imagine that? And there is literally absolutely no defense against bishop h5 checkmate. Like, zero. If you take the knight, bishop h5 checkmate. If you play f6, that doesn't help you at all, because you cannot hide with the king. Bishop h5 checkmate. You can take here on e5 with your queen. That would be the only check, but we just take it back. Nothing has changed, and bishop h5 is still a checkmate next move. So here, despite being a full queen up and this very weird king on f4, you don't want to have your king in the center of the board when your opponent still has a queen. But white is winning. Checkmate is unstoppable. Let me know whether you were able to find this checkmate. This is so incredible. If you enjoyed this video, then you're definitely gonna like this, because it's an amazing pawn endgame which 90% of the chess players simply cannot solve. Can you do that? It's so important that you understand the two key principles you have to know to be able to solve such endgames.